Hello and welcome to another Checkmate Pattern Recognition video. So let's dive right in here. I'll try and do about 20 problems. So you can go over these more than once if you'd like to help them be cemented into your memory, because if you solve chess puzzles once, you may forget those problems. But if you go over them multiple times, that can help you improve your pattern recognition. All right, so here we just had the king under attack by the queen here, and so the opponent's king runs away. Now we're looking for, these are mate in two problems, so I bumped the difficulty up a little bit more from the last video, from 0500 rating up to 1800 rating. Hopefully they'll still be okay for beginners. So what would you do here? Remember to look for checks, captures, and threats in that order, but since these are mate problems, you definitely want to look at the checks. We obviously don't want to go here because the rook could capture us. So that leaves this square right here on e3. So if we move our queen to e3, it attacks the king. And another important thing to know, especially for the beginners out there, when you attack the king with check, there are three or less options that the king can take. Either capture the attacker, block the attacker, or run from the attacker. So here the king cannot capture or block, and we'll have to run to h2 here. So then we can follow up with the final mate by using the rook here, and that'll attack the king with checkmate. All right, so try and solve that in your head. Hopefully you can figure it out, and let me know in the comments if these are generally too easy, too hard, what you think. So check and mate here. A nice little pattern of using the queen and rook together. There are many ways to attack with queen and rook. They can be a very dangerous combination against a king out in the open. All right, that was rated 799. So let's see what the next problem is here. A rook has moved over, attacking our unprotected bishop here. And often you need about 3 pieces to deliver a checkmate against a king, at a minimum. Now there are exceptions. If the king is trapped in by his own pieces, well then 1 piece could deliver a mate. But let's see what happens here. Our bishop's under attack. We want to look for checks first. So all right, a great pattern here that you should definitely pay attention to, because this comes up a fair amount in normal games. So we have the knight, bishop, and rook working together here. We have different checks that can be delivered. If our rook goes here, it would just be captured. So maybe that's not best. What other checks do we have? Just the knight. So if we take a look at that, jumping the knight here, delivering a check on the king. We also notice, and this is a great pattern, that once the knight gets to c6 here, or on the other side of the board, f6, the knight will control these 2 squares. And if your king cannot, the opponent's king, I should say, if it cannot run towards the center because this bishop is blocking the king from running away, and he has to go into the corner, well then you can deliver a mate with the rook backed up by that knight. So once again, we're going to move the knight up here with check. The king's forced into the corner, and we deliver mate. So a great pattern here where the knight is diagonally 1 square away from the king in the corner, and the rook can go here or here backed up by the knight, and deliver the mate, because the knight covers this other square that the rook is not on. All right, that was rated 926. On to the next one. We have a pawn instantly attacking our bishop here. What do we do? Do we save our bishop, or should we try and go in for a mate here? Well, obviously, since it's a mate in 2, we want to look for those checks. Now, we have a bishop that could check here, but the rook could capture. And the king can run, maybe to here. So maybe we go the other way. That's another way to deliver a check to the king. And we want to see where the king can run to once it's under attack, because you have to make sure, if you're going to check, that you have a good follow-up. You don't want to just check because you can, because it may run the king away from your checks and into an area where it can escape, excuse me. Here we go. So bishop checks. The king cannot go here or here or here because of the knight and pawn working together. So the king's only move would be to run here. And then it looks like our other bishop would be able to drop down and deliver the final mate. So interesting how both bishops are going to drop back, attack. The king will have to run, and the second bishop will drop back and attack, delivering the mate here. And the king cannot run away because this pawn is covering that, and the knight is helping, as well as the pawns. All right, here we go. Check and mate. So a little bit higher up on the rating there, 1365. Let's move on to the next one. Okay, a queen has retreated back, helping defend the back rank. What can we do here? All right. Well, once again, we have 3 pieces working together. This battery of rook and queen. And don't forget this bishop here, aimed up at the king's side. Well, the queen's side, where the opponent's king is located. All right. Maybe we don't have a good check to start this combination. So, if we move our queen here, it can just be captured, of course. And we don't have a good follow-up. Same goes if we move our queen here. So maybe we have to set up a mate in 1. If the checks don't work, and normally then you would look for captures, capturing any unprotected pieces, like this pawn possibly. But since we know we're going for a mate in 2, you definitely want to see if there's a way to set up a threat. And we can do that by dropping the queen back, creating a battery here, and threatening a mate in 1 here. If the king decides to run and we check, that would be mate, because the rook would be cutting off the king from running here. So here we go, and they don't even go any further, because if the king, of course, runs to here, we mate on h2. Now, the other option would be to maybe I don't know. Well, that's about it. You could try and put something here, but then that would kind of trap in the king. Yeah, the only thing you could do is go here with the queen, but then you could just capture the queen, and it's not looking good for the opponent. All right, hopefully you found that one. Let's move it along here if I want to try and get 20 problems in. So we just had what was that, a bishop captured by the pawn? Okay, hopefully you found the answer to this one. If you look for those checks first, you should find this one fairly quickly. We have a knight up here hovering around the king. The knight could go here, but then the king could just run into the corner. Maybe there's not a good follow-up. So we have to look at other checks if there are any. And hopefully you found a queen check here. So how would you mate with the queen and knight working together? Queen and knight can be a deadly duo attacking the opponent's king, mainly because the knight moves in a different way than the queen. The queen can move the same, as a bishop or a rook, or even the king. So they kind of mimic one another's moves, but knight and queen move in a different way from one another, and it can be pretty powerful. So we're going to go here and then deliver a mate with the follow-up right here. All right, on to the next one. We have 5 down, 15 more to go. So bishop centralizes, attacking our knight. What can we do here? Well, as always, look for the checks first. We don't want to go here because the bishop could block that. Or the king could even run over to here. Or here even. So maybe we have to go the other direction. What happens if we bring the queen up here? So we deliver check. If the king runs here, we can deliver mate right here on f2. Okay. And if the king runs here, we can still deliver mate. So that looks good. Check and mate. Once again, knight and queen working well together. All right. Oh, the pawn is on the run, threatening to move up here and promote with check. So what can we do here? All right. Very important pattern here. We notice that this pawn, the G pawn, is pushed forward, and that's created weaknesses around these light squares here, especially with this bishop aimed up through here. So that should give you a hint on what to do. The queen is trying to protect, but that would be difficult. If we move our queen here, and we can't mate here because the queen would just capture us, but we can deliver a mate up here. So check and mate. All right. That was rated 1500. So now here we go. H5, giving the king an escape square. That way he doesn't get in trouble in the back rank here. All right. Well, look for those checks as always, and hopefully you'll find the answer. And once again, we have at least 3 pieces. Well, the 3 main ones are the bishop, queen, and the other bishop, lining up here. So if we look for the checks first, of course the bishop could deliver a check here, but maybe it would be better for the queen to do so. So if the queen goes here delivering a check, then what? The king will be forced to run here. And then we have a nice little pattern of dropping our queen down here and delivering the checkmate, because that bishop will cover the G8 square. So hopefully you found that one. So there we go. And this is a great pattern to know where if you can attack along the H file and then have a bishop or a knight covering the king from being able, preventing the king from being able to run back. Sometimes a knight will be here and it will cover G6 and G8. And then if you can deliver a check on the H file, there's no stopping the mate. All right, here we go. Pawn is pushing forward. So this 3 versus 1 pawn majority looking dangerous on the queen side. We need to figure out how to deliver the mate. And, hopefully you found this one because your options are limited on your checks. If you try to push this pawn, the queen can just, capture and then you're in trouble. So the only other check is the rook. And the king cannot run because of the pawn covering here, the king covering here. So the only option is to block with the queen, and then you capture and deliver the mate on H4 here. So check and mate. All right. After this one, we'll be halfway done. The knight was delivering a check, so the king runs forward here. Attacking the knight, which is protected by the queen, but the queen is under attack by this bishop. All right, what can we do here? Well, we have the option of taking the bishop, being backed up by the knight, but then our knight could be picked off. And that's the only option. So how do we continue? Well, then it looks like a pawn can deliver a mate there. So try to figure that out in your head. And remember, when you're doing these problems, you can go through them once nice and slow, but if you just never look at them again, you'll forget a lot of these patterns, possibly. You might remember some, depends. But if you go over them multiple times, you're more likely to remember a lot of these patterns and be able to use them in your games. So, and also try and do as much in your head as you can. So we're going to check. The king runs. Now, notice when the king was here, the queen was covering all of these squares around the king. The only 2 the king could run to would be here or here, and of course the pawn blocked the king up here on H7. So the king can only run to H5. And if you know this pattern, it'll definitely help you figure things out easier in your own games and in tactics and tactics solving. All right, so now we can just deliver that pawn check, and the queen will be preventing the king from running anywhere. So there's the mate delivered by a pawn. And that was rated 1739. Sometimes it's easy to overlook pawn moves when you're trying to deliver a checkmate. All right, 10 more to go. Let's try and speed this along a little bit. Okay, great pattern here. The queen was checking, and we have a block by this rook. But now we're able to, see if you can figure this out. This is a handy pattern to know. I've probably delivered checkmate this way against opponents, but also lost games when I was under attack this way as well. So, look at your checks. The queen, can't do much. If you capture the rook, you'll be captured. If you go here or here, you'll be captured. So that leaves the only other piece that's available. This rook is kind of blocked in. So if we go here, what will happen? Well, the king remember, when it's under attack, it can only capture, block, or run, if it's even able to do all of those. So the only thing available here is to capture, but then the queen will be able to deliver a mate there because its own rook blocks the king from running. All right, here we go. And mate. All right, next one. Okay, knight has dropped back, attacking our queen. What are we going to do? Okay, remember, a lot of times it takes 3 pieces or more to deliver a successful attacking, mating attack against the opponent's king. We have a bishop covering here. We have rook and queen, lining up here. So what can we do? Well, we have to find a way to break through the pawn cover. And checks are most forcing, so look at those first. Queen sacrifice is not looking too good here. So maybe a rook sacrifice. So hopefully you found capture. The pawn would be forced to capture. And then the queen could deliver the mate here on h6. So capture and mate because of that bishop helping out. All right, on to the next one. What was that? A capture by the queen? Okay, we need to do something here. But what? We only have 2 pieces hovering around the opponent's king. Knight and queen. If we go here with the queen, the rook will just capture. So our other option is to go here with the queen, and the queen will cover all these areas. So the king would be forced to move here. But do we have a follow-up? Yes, we do. The knight can drop back here, deliver the mate. So hopefully you can figure that out. Try and work it out in your head. Take a look at it. Pause at any time if you need more time. But here we go. And mate. Because the queen is covering here, here, here. This pawn is preventing the king from running there. And the knight handles the remaining 2 squares. All right, 14. What do we have here? Knight just developed, helping to block in case a rook wanted to deliver a check there. All right. Okay, interesting attack here. The queen doesn't want to go there. The king will just pick the queen off. So, and we don't want to go here with the queen, or our opponent's queen will just capture. So that leaves the knight. The knight could go here, but the queen would capture, so that leaves that move. Delivering a check and forcing the king here, and the queen could mate. All right, check and mate. All right, next problem. The rook is behind the passed pawn now. Usually a great place to have your rook behind a passed pawn, getting ready to help push it forward. Instead of blocking, playing a defensive move, which could possibly, well, not even going to look at that because we are looking for a mate in 2 against our opponent. So how do we do it here? Okay, another example of rook and knight working together. So in an earlier puzzle, we saw where a knight could be here and a king would be in the corner, and a rook could deliver a mate by landing here or here. But this time, we're going to start the attack by moving the knight here, delivering a check. The rook is preventing the king from moving forward. The king will have to step to the side, and then the rook can deliver a mate here. So check and mate. Because the king is the knight is covering this, and the rook is attacking and preventing the king from moving, along with this rook of the black pieces preventing the king from running. All right, we got 5 more to go. Let's keep this moving along. We just had a check on our opponent's king. They retreat, and now we go ahead and deliver a mate. So hopefully you figured this one out, because you only have a few options. You're behind in material by 2 pawns versus a bishop. Your king is just hanging out in the open, which is not good. So look for the checks first. If you capture, king will just recapture. So your other option is to go here with the queen, forcing your opponent to block with their queen, and then you can deliver a mate with the rook. So check and mate. All right, next problem. What is this? Queen drops back to block our attack on the king. But now we mate in 2. So see if you can figure it out. Pause the video if you need more time. But look at those checks first. And the only piece that can check here is the queen. So hopefully you figured this one out. We're going to go here. And notice how the bishop is preventing the king from running. And then the queen, once it lands here, it will also help prevent that king from moving. The only option is to block, and then we just capture their queen with mate on e2. So check and mate. All right, we have 3 problems to go. The queen is pressed forward here, attacking our unprotected knight. What do we do here? Oh, great example here of... well, once again, we have 3 pieces, including a pawn, helping in the attack. But this is interesting. It's almost like a smothered mate, but instead of using the knight for the smothering checkmate move, we'll be using the pawn. So hopefully that helped you solve this. Look for the checks first. All right, we're going to move the queen up here, delivering check. The only way to handle this is to capture, and then our pawn will recapture, delivering a mate backed up by the knight. So check, capture for the mate. So interesting smothered mate with a pawn instead of the knight that usually delivers a smothered mate. All right, here we go. We had control of the H file, so our opponent fights back for control of that H file. And that will be his doom, because we have a battery and we have a knight that can help us. So that should be the hint, on how to solve this. We don't want to go here or the knight will be captured, but we can go here, delivering a check. The king will be forced to run, and whether the king goes here or here, our knight will cut off the king from running away to the center, and then we can just deliver a mate up here on h1. So check and mate. All right, one more, the final problem here. Here we go. Okay, we just had a capture in the center. We have 2 knights and a queen. You know, and maybe this bishop could help out. Maybe not. So how do we finish off our opponent's king? All right, look at all the checks. You know, if you need more time, pause. If not, here we go. It looks like we can go here, attacking the king, forcing the king to run forward, and then we can move our king here to d1, delivering the final mate, because the knight will prevent the king from running here. So check and mate. Great pattern, once again, of knight and queen working together. The queen is preventing the king from running this way. And this is a good example of the pattern when a queen is checking from a corner square. It usually covers all of these lines, two sides and the diagonal through the middle. The only thing it usually does not cover are these opposite two side squares. But the knight is here, backed up by the other knight. The rook is in the way. And because this pawn is blocking the queen, the knight will have to cover this other square to prevent the king from running. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed those 20 checkmate patterns. Feel free to leave comments. I always enjoy hearing from viewers and subscribers. Like and subscribe to support the channel if you haven't already. Thank you for watching and have a super chess day.